when times are really busy and I have an exam coming up for school and, I have more clients coming in or like different things like that, that it doesn't have to be perfect. And this was a hard thing that like I struggled with being in bodybuilding for so long is everything needed to be perfect. And now being more in like general health, I'm like, you know what? 80% is good enough sometimes.
Hey guys, this is Coach K, and you're listening to the Making Changes, Breaking Barriers podcast, where we talk about you. This is about you, your path, and your mind. So I'm very excited for today's episode, as I always am whenever we have a guest on. But I think you're going to really, really love hearing from our guest today about her journey, all the different adventures she's been on and the different competitions she's done and the different sports she's been involved with. She's been involved with a lot. So I'm very excited for you guys to hear from her. So I'm going to give you a quick bio of our guest, and then I will go ahead and intro her and we will get started here. So without further ado, let me introduce our guest today. Our guest today is Katie Griffiths, and she is what we would call an all-around athlete and competitor. From hockey to golf to physique competitions, coaching, and now flying planes, it kind of seems like Katie has done it all. She received a full ride golf scholarship to Jackson State University in Mississippi, where she pursued a degree in kinesiology and played Division I golf. After 2 years, Katie returned to Canada and started working at a gym where she was introduced to bodybuilding. Her involvement in bodybuilding led her to compete nationally and internationally, with the Arnold Amateur stage being the largest platform she competed on. Katie had some complications with bodybuilding, which then transitioned her to CrossFit and eventually back to golf. Katie resumed competing in long drive competitions in 2019 and obtained her pro card within a year, earning a spot in the world's competition. In addition to her own competitive pursuits, Katie has also worked with hundreds of clients on their own fitness and nutrition journeys. And most recently, due to some injuries in golf, Katie shifted her career path and enrolled in aviation school as a full-time student pilot. She currently travels across the states as a pro golfer for backswing golf events and participates in charity events. So, like I said, Katie has really done it all. So, hi, Katie. Thank you for being here with us today.
Hey, thank you so much for having me on. I'm super excited for this.
Of course. I am too. I mean, I'll kind of get into this more in a minute, but obviously we work together, but I never felt like we really got a chance to get to know each other really well. So I'm excited to hear more about your journey today. And I know that you're very busy. So yeah, again, thank you for taking the time to do this.
Yeah, no problem. Once you sent the message, I was like, heck yeah. You're like, this might be a long shot. I'm like, no, not at all. Like, I'm excited to chit chat.
Awesome. Well, where are you in the country right now?
Yeah, so I'm in Phoenix, Arizona. Right now, and this is where I'm stationed out of, even though sometimes I don't feel like I spend a lot of time here. This is where I go to school, and this is where I consider home right now.
Yeah, I remember when we were chatting in Vegas. So to give my listeners a little bit of background, I originally met Katie through what is still my full-time current job at Redefining Strength. She was working as a coach for Redefining Strength at the time, and we held a little staff gathering in Vegas, and so we both attended that and had obviously met virtually before that, but got to meet in person and chat more, which was really awesome. But I remember when we were chatting then, you were, saying you were stationed or lived in Arizona, but it didn't seem like you were there very often. And now you're, working on that pilot license. I'm sure you're there even less now.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to definitely take me all over the place. But when we were in Vegas, that was like in the middle of a bunch of backswing events back to back. And those are the charity events. So before Vegas, I was in Alaska, and then we were in California, and then we were in like Michigan. So people were like, yeah, you live in Arizona, but I don't think you actually live in Arizona.
Yeah. And are you originally from Canada? Did I have that
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yeah, I was born and
right.
raised in Canada and moved down to Arizona about 2 years ago.
Okay. So you were living up in Canada up until 2 years ago, pretty much.
Yeah. Once COVID hit and I was golfing a lot and had my pro card, my Canadian pro card, I was like, you know what, I might as well, I'm working online as a nutritionist. I might as well go down to somewhere warm that I can play golf. So yeah, I was like, Arizona it is.
That's awesome. My older brother actually works kind of in the golf scene. He works for CAA Sports.
Oh, sweet.
And so he's located in Jacksonville, Florida, and I've gone out to visit him a few times, and all his buddies are either also work in that scene or are pro golfers or trying to work themselves into the circuit. And it's like, once you're over there, it makes sense that that's where everyone is. Or same thing with Arizona because of the weather, and you pretty much get to play year round, which is awesome.
Exactly. There's a lot of golfers in this area. Texas and then Florida are like the main hubs of pro golfers. And I would say a lot of golf advocates as well, too, that are, hey, I want to play year round.
Yeah. Well, you kind of already referred to a lot of the things that you do, from golf to piloting to the coaching that you do, but I kind of want to take it back for a minute and hear a little bit about where this drive to compete comes from everything that you've done. And from what I know about you, you haven't actually said it directly, but I can almost guarantee you're a very competitive person and have this like very competitive nature. And so I'm curious whether that came from parents sometime in your childhood, if that's just something you always remember being is competitive.
Yeah, so I definitely grew up very competitive, and I'm 100% sure it came from my dad. We make jokes that I'm like a copy paste child of my dad because he's that competitive as well. But like my dad had my brother, and then I say like pretty much his second son. Like he had me on skates before I was walking. He had me doing hockey drills like when I was in grade 1 and 2, and I fell in love with hockey. And I fell in love with the game and competing. And my poor older brother, but I was so hard on him as like competitive wise. But it definitely, for me, it started at a young age. Hockey would have been my first spark in competing and my first eye-opening experience to, hey, like the competing side of sports. And then it grew into even like school sports. Like I played high level basketball when I was in school and volleyball. And like I just always, when it came to sports, it's like, how can I succeed in this? And what can I do to be the best on the field or on the ice or wherever I am?
How much older is your brother than you?
He's 2 years older than me.
Okay, so
And
you guys were pretty close in age then.
yeah, and he's competitive, but he's also very like quiet competitive person. And I'm a very loud competitive person, like huge extrovert. Like I will put my money on the line against him. Like even as a kid, if that was the thing, I was always pushing him and he was like sneaky quiet at being competitive. And yeah, I gave him a lot of challenges as a kid. Even if he was better at something than me, had the big mouth to kind of like back me up. But yeah, no. So we had a lot of like head to heads. And then I have two younger sisters, but they were both more into like the dancing and music scene. So they weren't on the same kind of like my brother and I played golf and hockey and like all those sports together.
That's so fun. I mean, I grew up with two brothers as well, one older, one younger. My older one
Yeah.
is a couple years older than me as well. And so I totally get that. I was always a little bit more on the quiet side when it came to competitiveness, but I had that drive. But yeah, those battles in the driveway, whether it was playing basketball or we broke out the hockey sticks every once in a while too. I mean, they got pretty intense. I'm going to guess that was the case for you guys too.
Yeah, that was definitely the case. Like we would be outside playing hockey until it was dark, and then we'd go play mini sticks until we had to go to bed. Like it was always just one thing into the next. And yeah, I was a little bit more aggressive than he was with hockey. That he moved into golf a lot faster than I did.
Okay.
But
Did he also pursue golf like at the college level or professional?
Yeah, so actually that's what got me into golf is my brother transitioned from hockey at a younger age and got into golf and was really good. He was one of the top graded juniors all through the States and Canada and played Division 1 golf down here and played pro as well. And he's also a pilot, so some might say I follow in his footsteps a little bit. But yeah, my dad saw all the opportunities for females golfing from following him around and really was an advocate to pushing me into golf, which at the time I was like, you want me to go from hockey, where it's so fast, to walking 4.5 hours? I was not a fan. But as I got older, I grew a lot of appreciation for the game and understood it more as a game over something that I just thought old people did for the longest time. But yeah, so my brother definitely like opened my parents' eyes to golf, and that's what got me into golf as well.
It definitely seems like your dad played a big role in this like love for sports and the competitive nature. What did that role look like? Like, what is his personality like? I mean, it seems like you wanted to do all these things, so maybe it didn't take like a big push, but like, did he coach you as a kid or?
Yes, he was the coach. He was the traveled us around. He did everything for our sport. And he has a like balance between, yes, like you got to do good in school, but he'd also go like over the top to make sure that we were successful in the sport that we decided to do. And at the time, like he had his favorite saying is like, you'll hate me now, but you'll love me later kind of saying. But he had that saying and he was really hard on us. And as you got older, you're like, hey, like I really appreciate that. But he had a big drive and such a competitive spirit for sports, whether it was hockey, golf, like any sport that we were pursuing. And just knew that if we put everything into it, that it could lead us to some pretty amazing places. So he held us to that expectation and to that standard, which was really cool as you got older. But when we were kids, I was like, this sucks.
Yeah, it sounds like he really like instilled resilience in you and probably commitment to whatever it was you were doing and hard work as well.
Yes. And he definitely like gave us as kids, I would say like the tools to believe that we can do whatever we put our minds to. I know like some people and just working with clients, like we both see that, people have these blockers and these mental blockers of wondering if they're capable of doing something extreme like bodybuilding or CrossFit or all these different things. But as a young kid, he would really like pay that mindset that, hey, whatever you want to do, as long as you work hard at it, like you can be where you want to go. So I think that's he definitely helped me as I got older be able to be like, hey, if I want to go do this, I can go do CrossFit competitions. If I want to do bodybuilding, if I want to do golf, if I want to do whatever, like I can do it. So he kind of helped with a lot of the mindset of being able to do whatever you want to do.
I really like hearing about that because I do think it is a very fine line and an interesting balance with a parent helping a kid learn those lessons and learn what it means to be committed to something and learn what it means to work hard. And, obviously there's a piece of it that is probably feeding off of the kid's personality because not every kid's going to be the same. Obviously, that was part of your personality was you were competitive and you were vocal and you wanted to do those things. So it helps, right? But yeah, there's like a fine line there between, a parent pushing a kid to then burn out versus pushing them to, like you said, be able to believe in themselves where, hey, it's not necessarily hockey that needs to be the thing you do for the rest of your life, but whatever you do for the rest of your life or whatever you choose to do in the moment, you can be great at if you put in the hard work.
And you're so right. Like it is such a fine line. There was times where like burnout was there and he didn't back off, but like it's a fine line when it comes to kids and there's no owner's manual or children's manual on how to parent properly. So it's kind of guess and find out.
Oh, for sure. I mean, Cora and I talk all the time about, I should say we love all of our parents and our parents did, we turned out just fine, maybe even better than fine, but they all just did the best that they could at the time. Right.
Exactly. And that's exactly what I say. I was like, there's no way to know that you're doing it right. It's like, you're just going to find out. So yeah, I'm very blessed on what my parents were able to, the mindsets and the hard work they like dove into as a kid with us. And like, it just, it shaped a lot to who I am today. So I'm very grateful for it.
And so you got that D1 golf scholarship. How long were you actually playing golf before? Like, when did you start playing golf?
Yeah, so I started playing golf when I was about 11 or 12. And it was more just kind of like, so I played hockey all winter season. And then I played for like an all-star team, which would be like a state team. So that would be our spring season. So from my home city, there was 4 of us that would be on this traveling team and we'd go all through the spring. So it'd leave like a couple weeks in the summer to play golf. So at that time, I would like golf for maybe 4 weeks with my brother and then hockey season in dry land or getting ready for evaluations would come up again. So I started when I was 11, 12. I didn't have much interest. It was more just kind of going out with my dad and my brother. And, I was naturally good at golf and I didn't appreciate it as much at the time when I was a kid as I like kind of do now. But when I was a kid, like I wouldn't practice at all and I'd go out and I'd hit the ball really good. And that's when my dad was like, okay, there's a lot of potential for you in this. But yeah, I started that. And then I played both hockey and golf through most of my high school. I took 2 years off of hockey to really get myself noticed in the States for golf if I wanted a scholarship. Then my senior year, I went back and I played midget AAA hockey and golf and had options for both. Due to a concussion in my senior year in playoffs, I got hit from behind and I was out on the ice. I was passed out in the dressing room. I was in an ambulance to the children's hospital and my parents were like, okay, let's talk about your scholarship option. And so that's when it was kind of like, hey, if you get another concussion to this extreme or in a certain time frame, like you're going to struggle with headaches and migraines. So that's when it was like, hey, well, I guess I'm doing golf. Guess I'm going to go take the golf scholarship.
Wow. Yeah, you answered so many of my follow-up questions I had
Oh,
when you
sorry.
started telling when
Yeah.
you started telling that story. Yeah, because I obviously was going to ask what made you choose golf over hockey. Obviously, that's a pretty big traumatic experience that you went through. What was that process like? I mean, you kind of just said, "Hey, well, was it like just obvious at that point I'm going to choose golf," or was it still like hard? You had to give up this other sport that you really loved, which was hockey.
It was so hard. And like on the side of knowing, hey, if I get another concussion and I want to live this active lifestyle for the rest of my life, well, I could essentially put that in danger if I get another one and I take the hockey scholarship. But like my heart was set on the hockey scholarship. I wanted nothing more than to play at the school. Like there was one in the States, one out east in Canada, and I was so excited for that. And you know, even now I play a little bit of women's drop-in hockey and just like the smell of the rink and stuff. Like that's how I know how much I love that sport. So yeah, it was really hard. And like, even though playing golf and moving down to the States wasn't anything foreign for me, at the same time, like moving to Mississippi was so far from my family. And I don't know, it's very different than being in Arizona before. Like I spent a lot of time here golfing as a kid. So there was a lot of things that like I had to talk to my parents about to really like dive in and not just if it was me and I didn't have them helping me guide with that decision, I probably would have went and played hockey. I probably would have ended up possibly having another concussion within the year. And then who knows where that would have led me fitness wise, coaching wise, like so many different things. So yeah, it was a tough decision. When you're a kid and you have your heart set on something and you have an option to go another way, but it's not the same sport that you love as much as the first one, it's hard. But yeah, we made it work.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, you have lived such an active lifestyle since.
Yeah.
And I mean, you probably could have predicted that as you were obviously very active just all through your childhood as well, that, yeah, you never know where going with hockey could have left you, unfortunately. Yeah. I mean, that's a really, really tough decision. But obviously, there's other sports similar to that with football. I mean, that one being the main one. Obviously, also soccer deals with it a little bit with concussions, and it can take people away from the sport, just getting those concussions.
Just gonna add in there, like I've had friends that kept playing through their concussions and stuff like that. And like now they can't even work out without migraines or headaches and things like that. And I just didn't want that. I knew the lifestyle I wanted to live long term. And I knew that that would be detrimental to that lifestyle if I went down the road. So yes, it's tough when it comes to sports. Like you really have to, as much as you love the sport and you want to compete, you got to keep your mind open to, okay, like what's best for me long term.
For sure. And that kind of gets me into my next question, which is to do with prioritizing your health. Like we've already mentioned, you do a lot, right? And you've done a lot. How have you found the balance with everything? The balance with all the travel that you do, the balance with your competitive nature, right? Like always really wanting to be good at whatever it is you're doing, but then also keeping in mind your mental health or getting enough sleep or, all the little things that, you talk to clients with as well when it comes to their health.
There's definitely times where it's in better, like sequence than other times. I find that it helps that I've been doing it for so long. So it's like the little habits of like atomic habits or anything like that. They're small little adjustment habits that, done over a longer period of time, they don't seem like they're anything, they're not hard or they're not a new habit. You're not trying to change your lifestyle around it. So I'm lucky kind of in the sense that I've had a good foundation off of those. And then I just kind of prioritize on how I'm feeling. Like there's times where on say a nutrition side that, I'll have some time and counting macros is easy. There's other times where I'm like, hey, I'm traveling a lot. I'm not going to be counting macros and I intuitive eat. And I just use these different small habits and kind of plug them in. I feel like I have like a library of small habits and I just plug them in according to where I'm at that point. For me, training wise that's like a type of therapy for me. Whether it's lifting weights, like recently I've got into running. And the nice thing about running is that it's nice to get away from with bodybuilding, I was in a lot in like, hey, how does your body look to be on a stage and stuff like that? And that trying to get from, hey, what's your body look like and what is your body capable of doing? And that kind of like brought me back into running. Plus, I can study when I run because I just listen to my textbooks or podcasts on what I'm trying to learn. So, yeah, I just try to find the balance between what's needed at that time. And then I really go into understanding that when times are really busy and I have an exam coming up for school and, I have more clients coming in or like different things like that, that it doesn't have to be perfect. And this was a hard thing that like I struggled with being in bodybuilding for so long is everything needed to be perfect. Your meals needed to be perfect, your macros, your cardio, your water, everything needed to be perfect. And now being more in like general health and just trying to stay healthy and feel fit and feel confident in these different areas, I'm like, you know what? 80% is good enough sometimes. Or hitting this is good enough. And like I teach my clients a lot of that as well too, is that we always try to, when we want to make changes, I feel like a lot of people are like, hey, I want to make changes right now. I'm like, if you make 80% change over 5 years, you're going to be shocked on where you can be and how little work it's going to feel like compared to 12 weeks of a 180 lifestyle change. So long story short, just, just being able to like stay on top of the little things and realize like, hey, that's good enough at times.
I really like where you're coming from with that and the approach that you're taking, how you mentioned, depending on what's going on in your life, especially because you have a lot going on and you're traveling and everything, there's different habits that you're plugging in, right? And it's not the same all the time. I actually just talked about that on a recent podcast episode where now is not always the right time, right? And what I mean by that is like, sometimes now is not the right time to be in a super regimented diet, like you mentioned, like not tracking macros, or now may not be the right time to be in the gym lifting 5 days a week or whatever it is, just because of there might be bigger things going on, whether that's a bigger problem or a bigger adventure that you're on or something along those lines. But with all that being said, now is always the time to focus on health in some way. And it sounds like you're doing that.
Yeah. And I love how you say that. It's like you can still focus on health in some way, and it doesn't have to be the whole thing at once. And I feel like both of us working with clients, we see this all the time. Like everybody wants to fix 20 years of problems in like 2 months. And it's like, I promise you, if we do little things over 5 years or like the same amount of time, like you're going to see amazing changes. So I try to use a lot of the same stuff I teach with clients with myself, especially when it comes to travel. Like I will be flying, like I've been in the airport flying commercially the last 3 Thursdays in a row for backswing events, plus flying myself 4 or 5 times a week. And it's like, you have to just be okay with knocking off some little things and moving on from the things that you can't do that day.
For sure. And not only sometimes do clients, and believe me, I fell into this trap, at some point in my life as well. But, clients want to solve 10 years worth of problems in 4 months, but also they want to solve one problem with 10 different approaches, meaning like a client will come to us and they'll say, okay, well, I want to lose weight. So I'm going to cut out carbs. I'm going to do intermittent fasting. I'm going to start a workout routine, and I haven't been working out at all, and all these things. And that's where we, pull back sometimes, where we're like, whoa, let's focus on one thing right now. Let's get really good at that. And then let's add the next thing if it's appropriate at that time.
Yeah. And it's crazy because it's like so many people want to make it so much more complicated than it is, where it's like, it doesn't have to be that complicated. You just have to be patient, which is so hard to do at the same time.
Exactly. And like you mentioned, we also don't need to be perfect, right? But that's where that 80-20 approach comes in, which I really love. And I think is a great way to live. Okay, transitioning. You mentioned this a few times, and I'm super naive, but I want to hear more about it. What is a backswing event?
We have 190 female pros across the states, and we're all part of a company called Backswing, and we go to different charity events all through the states, and we fundraise money for them. So we fly, like Arizona alone, I think we have over 900 events this year. And so every event, the coolest thing about it is that every event's a different charity. So we get sent to us like a couple weeks before, like what the charity is. We raise money for like women in construction, children's foundation, sporting teams, like a bunch of different things. So it's really cool. And like we get to go out there and depending on the event, we set up on a golf hole as the tournament's out and we do like a beat the pro competition and fundraise money for that charity. Our company does a really good job of working with female pros to be able to, because anybody that's tried to play an individual sport at a professional level, the funding is totally different than a team sport. A team sport at a professional level, once you're on with the team, you've made the team, the funding from the team takes you to where you got to go, right? If you think of an individual sport, there's no team. So funding a lot of the times is your own sponsorships, it's your own money, it's maybe some family, like depending on what it is, as you're building up through the mini tours, it's all funding out of your pocket, right? So they tried to make this, or they did make this company where they are helping female pros be able to pay for events, to get them into tournaments, to get them, fund them for tournaments, but also us be able to give back to charity events. So it's so cool. I love working for them.
So a lot of the people, maybe including yourself, I'm not exactly sure where you're at with this, but a lot of the women who are part of this do this for the charities, but also, you know, get paid out of it as well, but then are going off and competing in pro tournaments as well,
So
correct?
every female in that swing played or plays some professional level of golf. So some of them are on tour with an Epson tour, some are on tour with Women's All Pro Tour, some are long drive tour athletes. Like we all have a pro card in golf and then go out and do these events. And it's so much fun. Like the amount of people that we get to meet and network with and talk to, and like nothing feels as rewarding as like finishing a day and seeing like we raised like some events I've raised over $10,000 one day out there, and seeing like, hey, we're able to give back this huge chunk of money to this organization by being out there and helping them fundraise at their event. So it's really rewarding, just like seeing the money that you raise and foundations that you get to give back to.
That's really awesome. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I'm really glad I asked about that because I had no idea what it was. And, you know, in my mind, I was thinking it was some sort of like competition for like longest drive or something, which it sounds like is a whole other thing.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing. Yeah. So that's what
well.
I competed in as well, was professional long drive, which is like pretty much like a grid that you have to hit your driver the longest, but stay within like 30 yards on the grid. And you just swing really fast and hit the ball really far. But that's cool. Yeah, that's fun too.
Are you still doing that or no?
No, that actually led to most of my injuries in golf. I tore my spinal erector at Worlds in 2021, which led to coming back from it a little bit too quick. And I ended up with bulging discs in my L4, L5, L5, S1 and degenerative disc syndrome, joint syndrome. So that's actually what led me into going into aviation, was my injury in golf and realizing, talking to some doctors and being like, hey, if I herniate this disc, that's probably going to be surgery before I'm 30, and not really knowing where that leaves my golf career. So looking at options in my head for aviation, I was like, I want a career that I travel as much as I do for golf. So what does that leave me? And my brother, being a pilot, was like, hey, you know, there's a huge demand for pilots right now. And I always had being a pilot in my head the same as like being a doctor, or like, I was like, no, I'm going to need 9 years of schooling. Like, there's no way that's ever going to happen. Like, those people are way too smart. I'm not smart enough to do that. And like, that was kind of my own limiting factor going into school again. It's like, I don't think I'm smart enough to do that. So as much as we talked about the amount of confidence that I've had in sports and in competing, I maybe have lacked some of that confidence when it came to school. So going into aviation, like that was a big eye opener. And even being in school for the amount of time that I have and how I've been able to progress, I'm like, hey, like I can do this. If I put the same mindset as I do in sports to this schooling, I can do it and I can make it happen and I can do amazing in this as well. So yeah, it was kind of cool transition.
So you've had a couple of these big injuries. You know, that's obviously in a way shaped the way that the next part of your life has gone, obviously with the concussion in hockey and then with the long drive competition with your back. So maybe that played a part, but what do you feel really like got you over that hump that gave you the confidence to be like, okay, these things happened. Flying planes could be something that really allows me to do those things. It's not something I felt confidence, but confident with, but let's go for it. Like, was there something that happened that really allowed you to take that leap?
Um, I would say that I'm a person that takes a lot of leaps with being like, "Hey, I'm gonna figure it out when I take that." It can kind of drive my family crazy because they're like, what's Katie about to do next?" kind of thing. But like for aviation, like that leap is I started looking actually at helicopters and military when I was like got into the mindset of being like, "Hey, like I want something that I'm gonna travel with." I liked a lot with the military lifestyle in the sense of like the fitness and like the group and like just like having like that family. And I was going to go into helicopters and I don't know. It's just like I did some searching on what's available helicopter wise, rotor wing wise outside of the military. And there wasn't as much of fixed wing. I went up in with one of my friends who also does the backswing events and she flies jets out of Scottsdale. And I was like, "Do you know what? Like, this is what I'm thinking. Like, do you have some advice for me?" And we went up in a Cessna 172. If there's any plane listeners out there, it's a very small airplane with a single propeller. And we went up, and as soon as those wheels got off the ground, I was like, "Yeah, I don't know how I'm going to make this happen. I don't know the funding for school yet. I don't know where I'm going to go to school. I don't know how I'm even going to make it through the ground side of school, but I'm going to make this work because being up in the air just gave me a whole different feeling. Being in control of an airplane and looking down and seeing how small everything is. Like we know it when we fly commercial with like Southwest and stuff like that, but it's a different feeling when you're in that airplane, you're looking down and you're controlling that airplane. And that was a big turning moment for me where I was like, I don't know how I'm going to make this happen, but I'm really good when I make my mind up that something's going to happen, that I'm like, it's going to happen. And I try to put myself in every position to make that goal or make that dream possible. So that was kind of like a big turning point for me.
Yeah, and it sounds like maybe even without realizing you did take a few small steps to like kind of get your foot in the door. Like you talked to your friend who is in that world. You got up in an airplane, which was really the turning moment, right?
Yeah.
But you did take those couple of small steps first, and then it really hit. Okay, this is truly something I want. So
Yeah.
let's go for it. What does that? I'm curious. What does that schooling look like? Like how many years does it actually take?
So my whole schooling, I'm in like an accelerated program. So it's like it's a lot of schooling. Normally, if you're kind of just going through it slowly, you might fly 1 or 2 times a week. I'm flying up to 5 times a week, plus doing my ground schooling. So building all of my hours, I'll probably be 2 years at this rate.
Wow.
Yeah, which is gonna be so, and that gets me all my licensing, and then I got to build 1,500 hours before you go to airline. So I'll be working on that, and I have a couple different options for that. Alaska is an option for that as well too. There's a lot of flying up there to build your hour. Yeah, so that's kind of the plan. And then I'm not 100% set on, hey, if I'm gonna go to airlines or like I said, my friend there, like she flies jets, and I'm like, that seems really badass. Like I want to fly jets. So yeah, that's kind of I'm just leaving that open, but just knowing that this career is going to take me a bunch of different places. And I'm a person that loves to network and just see where life takes me in that time.
Well, that's really awesome. And it's cool that you can go through this, schooling and then have so many options and you don't necessarily have to decide right now, like what that is going to look
Yeah.
like for you.
A lot of times we look at it as like, hey, like airlines, right? Those are the planes we fly on. But aviation actually has a lot of different opportunities. And there's not a lot of female pilots as well. Female pilots are less, I think, than 5% of the pilot population, which is insane. So just, I don't know, being in an industry where hopefully be able to kind of like talk to females at maybe a younger age and be like, hey, like this is a career option for everybody. Right. And I kind of did a lot of that in golf too. Like when I grew up playing golf, I was one of the only girls that golfed. Right. It was a very like the rest of the group were all boys. There was very few females in that sport. And now I'm in aviation. I see the same thing. There's very few females in this industry. And like one of my goals with it would be to, just be able to open the eyes of young females in sciences and flying and like these different career paths that have been looked at as a primarily male sport or career. So that's one of the cool things with it as well.
Yeah, what a cool almost, I mean, I don't want to say it's like a side piece to all of that, but a little bit, to be able to inspire, like you're saying, the young generation to do the same. I actually also just interviewed, she's a friend, but she's a former FBI agent, and she was saying something very similar about that field as well, and how
Yeah.
it's, she's actually retired now, but it's, continues to be one of her goals when she comes across someone who she feels, could potentially fit that mold. It's like, hey,
Yeah.
is this something you've looked into? Because it's just historically not a field that women have really gotten into or pursued
Yeah.
as much as males.
And it's definitely you see it. You see it a lot with when you're in an airport. Like, how many pilots do you see that are male compared to female, right? And we start seeing that at a young age if we're flying. And yeah, just to kind of break that barrier. And that kind of wraps around full circle the
Yeah.
podcast. But like to break that barrier of, hey, like this is, I don't know, more of a male dominant area. Like, let's start helping the younger generation to like see that this is an opportunity for them as well.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's really awesome. I'm really excited to kind of see where this goes for you. Maybe I'll fly in an airplane that you're, yeah, that would be awesome. But one thing that I don't want to pass over, because I really
Yes.
did want to ask you about and hear more about your experience with, is the physique competitions.
Yeah.
Or is that what you would call them, or did you do bodybuilding? Because those are two different things, right?
Yeah, so women's bodybuilding is like a big umbrella, and under the umbrella, you have like women's bikini, figure, wellness is a new category now, fitness, physique, and then bodybuilding. So it's
Okay.
like it's a bunch of subsections under, with bikini being like the very small figures, and then figure was like broader shoulders, broader legs, like V taper, and then they just get progressively more muscular in different categories as you move. But yeah, so I started in that in, oh, that would have been like 2014 or 15, a while ago. Yeah. So I was at a gym. I was home from the summer from school, and I was working at a gym just at the front desk. And it seemed like everybody in that gym was getting ready for this competition. And I was like, what competition? Like, what is it? It's just like curiosity. And it was a regional show is what they were getting ready for. So in bodybuilding, you do like a regional show, and then you can build up if you place into provincial, which would be state, and then you build up and you go to nationals. If you place at nationals, you can go international. So I started, and when I started looking at like that same show everybody else was doing, I was like, okay, I'm not big enough to be in figure, so I'm gonna do bikini. Bikini is very, very, very feminine and very like high heels and like moving your butt and all these like very feminine moves. And like my first posing practice, I was like, okay, that's not me. I was like, let's back it up here, because I don't think I can do that. I can't do that in a gym in front of my coach. I definitely cannot do that in front of people. So I was like, okay, let's maybe take this year off and let's work on my physique to get me into figure competitions. So that's what we did. And we took the year to build proper proportions to be in figure competitions. Like I said, it was like the bigger shoulders, bigger back, bigger legs, and then like very small V tapered waist is what we were like building for physique wise. And then I went to that regional show and I placed okay. And then I was able to go to provincials right after that, but my coach was like, we're too small for provincials. Like, let's take another year. So we took another year. I worked my butt off, like listened to everything he said. And then we went to provincials the year later and I won provincials, which was really
Wow.
cool. And that placed me to go to nationals, where I went, I think it was 4 or 5 weeks later, and I placed at nationals, which led me to be able to compete internationally. And then we took another year and a half off to build before going to the international level. And that's when I stepped on the Arnold stage in 2018. So it's crazy because I get a lot of clients, or at the time when I posted a lot more of those pictures, I got a lot of people being like, I want to look like that. I want to look like that. And I had to be like, hey, this was in 2018, but I started this in like 4 years ago, 5 years ago. Like, that doesn't happen overnight. And I also explain a lot to people when it comes to bodybuilding and physique or figure competitions, is when you're that deep into prep before a show, I was probably the most unhealthy when I was that lean compared to how I am now. And a lot of people have a hard time wrapping their head around that, because your body looks a certain way and they associate that with max amount of health. And I was like, no, that's like, I didn't have my cycle. My mood was all over, my hormones were all over the place. Like that was not a healthy state for my body to be in. So it was fun and exciting, but yeah, it definitely had a lot of like negative effects with it as well.
Oh my gosh, I have so many questions I feel like
Yes.
from this. But
Yes.
okay, my first one is you talked about how you did, I think you said it was the provincials and then you won. And so then 4 weeks later you had nationals. From I know very little about this, but from what I see, at least on social media and stuff, is like after event, generally a lot of people get to like take a deep breath and not have to continue to be that lean. But you had
Yeah.
another competition 4 weeks later. So was that like hell? Was
That
that
was
really
the
hard?
hardest. That was the hardest 4 weeks. And it's like normally because you like push yourself so hard for that show, right? And then yeah, you're like, exactly, you take your foot off the gas and you have that little bit of time. And you mentally prepare that way, like, hey, you know what? I only have 2 weeks of this left. Like, I got this. I can push this extra bit. And then you finish and you're like, I have 4 weeks of this now. Like, I'm not done yet. If I want to keep going, I am not done yet. And you have to like adjust your mind to being like, I pushed so hard thinking that I was going to be done now. And now I have to keep going. And it's a bigger show. It's a whole different, like, you have to do the whole water cut again and like everything. And yeah, it was hard. And like energy wise, like I don't think I slept so much. Like that's how low my energy was. It's like I would get up, I'd do my cardio early in the morning, I'd do my meal prep. I was working, what was I working at that time? I think I was working at a supplement store and a little bit online. And like I remember being in the supplement store and just being like trying to keep my head up. Like that's how exhausted my body was. And
So
any
what did the training look like?
So most days, I would have like 5 days, 5 or 6 days of weight training. And then on top of that, like when I was very close to competition, I had, depending on the day and what I was training, I had about an hour to up to 90 minutes of cardio in the morning and then 45 to an hour of cardio after.
Wow.
Yeah. And then on days that I wasn't weight training, we took out the PM cardio session and I would just have a morning one that would be a little bit longer. So I was in the gym every day. Like I was a person with the mindset of like, hey, if I'm going to go and do morning cardio, like I'm going to be there at 5 o'clock in the morning or just like get it done as soon as I wake up. So like I knew the morning crew at the gym and then I knew the night crew at the gym. And I was
Wow.
just like, yeah. And I did that for like 4 years. So that's where it's like, now it took a lot of time to be like, hey, I don't need to be at that same level of training, that same level of food monitoring. Like I did the extreme side for so long. So it took a while for me to be okay with, hey, this is good enough. Right. It's hard to kind of adjust that mindset. But yeah, it was very extreme for that amount of time. Obviously off season didn't have that much cardio and had more food. But yeah, you definitely get a lot of bad habits after doing something that extreme.
Well, yeah, and like you said, a while ago in 2014 when you started down this, you saw these people around you who were getting ready for some sort of competition and the competitor in you,
Yeah.
right, was like, I want in on this, right? And
I
so
was like,
that
I
brings
can
us
do
all the way
that.
back. Yeah, that brings us all the way back to the beginning of the interview where, we were talking about that competitive nature and that's what got you in on it. But not that it backfired because it didn't. That whole 4 years was, I'm sure, an experience and you
Yeah.
accomplished a lot. I mean, that's really, really awesome what you did. And you probably learned a lot about yourself in that time, but it sounds like maybe part of what you learned was there's a way to have more balance than this, right? And
Oh, yeah.
maybe find other ways to get your competitiveness out.
Yes. And that's exactly where it led to. It led to like I competed in CrossFit right after figure competition because I was like, these girls are ginormous at this level. And there's a lot of other things that go into bodybuilding that I was like, I don't want to do that to be at that level. But I was like, I need that competitive drive. And with bodybuilding, the one thing I struggled with, and it lasted for a long time, it's a lot better now, but it's like you're getting judged on your body, right? You are literally getting judged for your proportions, for your body fat, for all these things where I'm like, I want to work my butt off and then I want to show up to a competition, work even harder, and then get rewarded. Like, not off of, hey, like, your hair didn't match your suit or something like that. I'm like, that doesn't matter. I did all my cardio. I'm like, I've
Yeah.
worked so hard for this. So that's what led me into CrossFit is being like, hey, like CrossFit, you can compete and you can train really hard when nobody's looking, but then you can show up and you can even train harder in competition and be rewarded for it. So that's what led to that, right? Shortly
Yeah.
after.
Yeah. And I mean, we won't get into this too much
Yeah.
because this gets
That'd be
into
a whole other.
well, yeah. But I was going to talk about the hormone piece of things because you mentioned that and just how, I mean, that's something that we deal with clients, obviously clients who are getting close to the perimenopause stage and menopause stage. But it's talked about some, but how athletes who are really pushing their bodies to the extremes, women athletes can deal with a lot of backlash when it comes to hormones as well. And obviously during the physique competition you were.
Yeah. And it was hard after when you like come out of it to regulate that. Like you don't realize how long it takes to fully regulate that. And like that doesn't just go for figure competitions. That also goes for general population that we work with that always extreme diet. Right. And then they wonder like, hey, like I'm always extreme dieting. I'm eating so little amount of food, but I'm not getting the results I want. It's like, hey, I can relate to this. Right. Like, it's really crazy what the body can do and how it adjusts to those circumstances.
So on top of the aviation school that you're going to, which sounds very intense and taking up a lot of your time right now, you also are doing some nutrition coaching as well right now, right?
Yeah, exactly. So
Awesome.
pretty much backswing, flying. And I love working with people. I've worked with people for 7+ years. So it's hard not to even keep that at a small capacity for me.
Okay. I feel like we've talked about like so much in a matter of 50 minutes. So thank you for being here. But before we wrap up, I do end all of my interviews with a rapid fire round where the goal is to answer every question in 1 word to 1 sentence max. Okay. And obviously if it's not that, that's okay. But that's the goal. And just kind of like first thing that comes to mind. So are you up for it?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, awesome. The competitive person in you, I know, was going to be like, all right, I'm ready. Let's go. All right. So question number 1 is, what is one thing you're doing right now that makes you very excited?
Running.
Ooh, cool. I was like expecting it to be flying, but yeah, you mentioned you just started running too. Okay. And number 2, what has been the hardest part of your sports career?
Injuries.
Fair. Number 3, if there was one sport you haven't played or haven't played professionally that you could snap your fingers and be great at right now, what would it be?
Tennis or snowboarding. I don't know. They're so close.
Tennis actually would be mine too. I think it'd be so cool to be a pro tennis player for like so many
I
reasons.
think so. I think so too. I'm like, I love snowboarding. I think it'd be really cool to do that, but I also don't want to be in the cold full time. So we'll probably go with tennis.
Yeah. All right. Number 4 is, what is the one thing that will get you the most competitive?
Oh, any bet or any time that somebody is like, I don't know, I'll do this better than you. I'm like, okay, let's do this.
Yeah. Nice. I love it. All right. Number 5, last one. What's the best advice you've ever received?
That I know this sounds like kind of cliche, but like anything that you put your mind to, you can do. And that like came from my dad, is like anything that you decide that you want to do, you can do. It might be hard work and it might suck at times, but as humans, we're capable of a lot more than we think we're capable of.
And that's not cliche, right? To be able to believe that and be told that and then truly believe it and go and put that into practice can get people really far in life. So that's awesome. Well, thank you, Katie, so much for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
And doing this interview. For anyone who's listening who wants to check out more about Katie, what she's up to, or even hit her up for nutrition coaching, you can find her on Instagram at It's Coach KG if you're interested in that. And I'll also link that in the bio for this episode. So yeah, I'll say it one more time. Thank you so much for being part of the Making Changes, Breaking Barriers podcast. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks so much for having me on. It was a lot of fun.
Of course. Well, like always, I will leave you guys with this. Changing your path will not be easy. It will be challenging. I'll say that over and over again, but it will be worth it. So do a self-check today. Are you on your path up your mountain? And if not, what path are you on?